They ask him, why don't you stay more? Buddha lived until the age of 80. And he said, when there's a big tree, the small trees, they can't grow well. Now I have to make way for the others. My work is complete. Two years later, he starts wandering in India like a good sannyasi. He only has his clothes and 2 books, the Gita and the Imitation of Christ, is a medieval masterpiece about how to live in the image of Christ or to become like Christ. A book which possibly was written by St.Anthony of Padua, on which we will speak soon. His story, and this repeats now, his spiritual mission, there is a pattern. He walks as a beggar, as a no one. He has a few conversations with people, everybody is completely amazed. After a few talks, he goes and he meets the Maharaja, the king of that district of India. They become his disciples. Everybody is at awe by his wisdom, his character, his holiness, his spiritual power. And then he doesn't stay. He goes again like a beggar, unknown, begging from door to door, until somebody speaks to him, realizes who he is, introduces him to his friends, he gives a few talks, and again the Maharaja. I think 5 or 6 Maharajas, he walks like that. And that being a nobody would repeat also in the West. Starting from that, but having such an immense power, he has influence on the highest and most important people. He receives the vision to go to the Congress of all religions, the first in the world, and again he was born and the entire mission and everything was weaved in very, very precise timing. All the Maharaja says, you have to go and represent India. Nobody speaks like you. Nobody lives Indian spirituality like you. Many people offer to sponsor, and he is waiting to get a vision. And so he sees Ramakrishna walking on the waters of the ocean and telling him to come. He realizes he needs to go, but he's not willing to go without the consent of the wife of Ramakrishna, the Holy Mother. So he writes her a letter. She receives a similar vision. She prays to Ramakrishna, receives a similar vision, and so he goes to America. Now, he goes, he's completely unprepared. He doesn't know anyone, he doesn't have enough money to stay until the Congress. He arrives in July, the Congress is in September, he cannot pay for a hotel, he doesn't know anyone. You need a letter of recommendation to enter, he doesn't have. The registration for the Congress is closed. But there he is, with faith, a man of God, coming to do the will of God. So he's fine in his faith. And the same like in India, he walks around, he goes on the train, and he meets someone. And somebody is striking a conversation with him. Even he's an Indian and America is still very racist at that time. And when he opens his mouth and people realize who he is, they take him into his house, they introduce him to so-and-so professor writes the letter of recommendation saying he's more wise and more knowledgeable than all our professors put together. He returns to Chicago with the letter from the professor and find out that he doesn't have the address of the Congress people, so he sleeps in the train station. Again, he is a beggar. And after some time of being a beggar, somebody finds him in the street and says, "Do you need help?" And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely. I really need help." So this woman takes him to her house, finds out who he is, says, "Oh, the organizer of the Congress is a personal friend of mine. Let's go to him." They introduce, he gets the letter, and he enters the Congress. So there is a continuous providence embracing Vivekananda, and his faith and mission is unaltering. And I give these details because maybe you also have a purpose. Not maybe, you also have a purpose. And the purpose will have these moments where we lose faith, where everything seems to go wrong. But if you keep that light in your heart as he did, things go right again, and they are even stronger, because you feel the whole universe wants you to succeed. He arrives at the conference, he realizes everybody wrote a speech. He's like, oh my God, I came all this way here, I didn't write anything. Everybody wrote a speech, why didn't I write anything? Okay, it's my first Congress, but this would be logical. And he's very stressed, but godly. So he rises there, an absolute no one. And he stands, there's still the recording, you can find it on YouTube, and a total nobody stands up and says, brothers and sisters of America. 7,000 people in the audience, they all stand up, suddenly, and clap and clap and clap and clap for a few minutes. He didn't say anything, they don't know who he is, but God lives in him. And all of them, they felt it. And then he gives an amazing speech, which he didn't write, about the tolerance of Indian religion, about its beauty, its depth. Everybody is in awe. That's it. From that moment, he is a world celebrity. He becomes the center of the conference, and he starts to go and lecture around the United States. He begins centers. He has a huge following. The top of America is following him. All the newspapers are talking to him. He's there. You can see Tesla and William James in that picture. Tesla is extremely influenced by Vivekananda, and many of his discoveries, some of them still hidden today, or at least there are many stories that are hidden today, they came from Vivekananda's understanding of prana, of akasha, space, the space which is charged with energy. This is the fifth force that Tesla was searching for, and the kalpas, or the cycles of time. William James, who is the Sigmund Freud of the United States, the founder of American psychology, who was in his first generation studying a lot of religion, was extremely influenced by Vivekananda. They were friends, and he was just like, I met perfection. There's no, like, the words that William James speaks of when he speaks of Vivekananda are just the highest. And William James aims to objectify, to bring scientific tool to understand the religious and mystical experience, and he's very inspired by Vivekananda there. He goes to England, he goes to France, he begins centers, he has following, his disciples, the main disciples follow him to India. There are living centers all over the world, and the East has met the West. Yoga, Buddhism, spirituality, enlightenment, boom, is exploding over there. Now he would speak, for example, in Texas. He would speak in front of the people in the street, and people would gather. Now, Texas, 19th century, Hindu men speaking to the crowd. Doesn't sound good. So somebody with a gun, as you know, in Texas some people have a gun, says, well, why don't I shoot him? I mean, he's speaking to the people, he's not white, I shoot him. So he takes the gun and he starts shooting above Vivekananda's head. Vivekananda, being a man of God, doesn't stop his lecture. He continues as if nobody is shooting at him. He finishes the lecture, and the man who shot him, he stops shooting and he starts to listen to this guy, because he never saw such courage. In the end of the lecture, he takes the gun with which he's trying to shoot him and shakes his hand and says, man, you are really courageous. All sorts of stories and miracles happen over there. For example, there are many stories of miracle. I just give you one. A young boy was drowning in the water, some water reservoir. And as he's drowning and dying, he sees an image of an Indian man. And that image somehow keeps him alive and he's saved. Some years later, he's walking the streets of Chicago and he sees that Indian man walking. He's with his mother, they follow the man, they enter the lecture. They listen to the lecture, they are amazed. And in the end of the lecture, they come to the man who he saw in a vision. And of course it is Swami Vivekananda. And Vivekananda, when he looks at that young man, he says, boy, I told you to be careful with water. And he's like bowing down, he says, I want to be your disciple, you saved my life. And Vivekananda says, no, I'm not your guru. Your guru will come and will give you a silver cup. And the boy is just broken. He says, no, you're my guru. He says, no, it's not meant to be like this. He will come. Years later, Yogananda arrives in USA to complete the mission there, and he becomes his disciple, this man whose name I can't remember. And he's waiting for the silver cup so that his life will be wrapped nicely. And it took, I think, 13 years or something before Yogananda goes in the 30s to India and returns and brings them a silver cup. And when he gets the silver cup from Yogananda, he starts crying and he says, now my life is at peace. Now I know you are my guru and everything happened as it was supposed to be. He returns to India, he's accepted like a king, he comes on a horse carriage, they would take the horses away and the Maharajas will pull the carriage of Vivekananda. He is just a walking god. In India he starts numerous centers, both ashrams and centers for relieving the poor and for helping pilgrims, for education of women. He's there, his main disciple, and that was Vivekananda's choice. His main disciple was an English woman, not an Indian man. And that was a part of his message to the world. And you can see her sweet sister Nivedita, once with the mother and once with Vivekananda. And you can see also the sweetness, I think, in their relationship and this inner freedom, which was so characteristic for his teachings. He's traveling the world, he goes through Egypt, he goes through all sorts of places. In Egypt they get lost in the streets and they see some prostitutes, and the prostitutes go to him and says, come, why don't you enjoy us for so and so money? And Vivekananda, he looks in their eyes and he sees their soul and he starts weeping. And he says, what souls, what the light of God is degenerated to. And he's crying. And then a man from the street, an old man, comes and falls at his feet and says in Spanish, for some reason, a man of God, a man of God, a man of God. And his spirit, his light, it was visible to all, in all traditions, in all countries, wherever he went. There was such a tremendous light coming out of him. He educated his disciples. He created the system, he wrote numerous books, among which the most important are Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga, that explain the Indian wisdom to, he said, that a Western boy can understand. This is my mission. And he succeeded. He had this tremendous logical power and he succeeded. And a tremendous spirit and a tremendous experience. He experienced all the teachings, and so they can be transmitted, and so they can be understood. He told his disciples that he would die before the age of 40, and later that his boat is approaching a quiet harbor. Somebody kind of playfully asks them, he says, oh, Ramakrishna says, when you know who you are, you will leave the world. Do you know already who you are? And Vivekananda says, yes. Yes, now I know. Now, he's asked once, why don't you take a rest? Because he was working so hard. When he started working, he got very sick, and he was a bit sick almost all the time because he was just non-stop. And he says, I cannot stop working. From 3 or 4 days before Ramakrishna died, Kali entered in me, and now she's doing her work through me. And then just before he's dying, he's 39 and a few months old, he says, now I cannot see that lady anymore. I cannot see Kali. Now everything is quiet. My work is complete. And they find him when he's a bit sick, he's whispering to himself, now it's over. But I left them something for another 1,500 years. It's okay. I left them enough to chew for 1,500 years. And he says, if there was another Vivekananda, he would understand what this Vivekananda did. But who knows if there will be another Vivekananda. And in his last days, he's very contemplative, he's very quiet. He gets healthy before he dies. He's healthy, he's full of energy, he's having his daily routine. He's searching in the calendar to find a good day to die. He's looking at the moon dates and so forth. He asks for the special Indian calendar, the almanac, and he somehow sets the date and everything is ready, and he says a few goodbyes, and he says, here, when you burn my ashes, put them, this is the place. And he gives the authority for this and the authority for that, and everything is settled. He does a very long meditation. He does a special ritual with the disciples, empowering them and giving his power. He asks one of the disciples if he can please massage his feet. He lies a bit like this, he lies a bit like that, he lies a bit on the back. He breathes once. After a few minutes, he breathes another time. And he enters Mahasamadhi. The doctor comes to check him and discovers blood in his eyes, blood in his nose, and blood in his mouth, which is a sign for yogis that they leave from here. When you die, please focus here. And they die and merge into the Absolute, so he had all these signs. They ask him, why don't you stay more? Buddha lived until the age of 80. And he said, when there's a big tree, the small trees, they can't grow well. Now I have to make way for the others. My work is complete. And indeed, his spiritual mission in the 16, 17 years that he did it was done with shining success. It was just one triumph over another, and with total humility, with perfection in everything. And we'll take this sweet quote from Philip sent us. I'll essentialize it just a bit shorter. So to end with a quote, he says, "Liberations means entire freedom. Freedom from the bondage of good as well as from the bondage of evil. A golden chain is as much a chain as an iron one. There is a thorn in my finger, and I use another thorn to take the first one out. And then, when I have taken it out, I throw both of them aside. So the bad tendencies are to be contradicted by the good ones until all that evil is almost disappeared or is subdued, is held under control in the corner of the mind. But after that, the good tendencies have also to be conquered. Thus the attached becomes the unattached. Let the ripples come and go, let huge actions proceed from the muscles and the brain, but let them not make any deep impression on the soul." So this is this remarkable human being. I was really trying to condense, even it came quite long, but I was trying to condense an immense life. Many very good biographies of him, some really stupid ones. I also read one or two biographies which were just horrible, but many great biographies, and you can read a lot, also his books and also about him, and I hope that he can inspire your heart as much as he did mine. And I've been reading his books and about him and about Ramakrishna for 20 years, and I just feel they're like a part of my life. I can give them a phone call or something. It's so interwoven in my heart and so alive in me, the presence of this great man and the presence of his master, Ramakrishna.
Hey guys, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content on spirituality, Tantra and more.
And if you want to sign up for our online classes or for our retreats, you can see our website on the description below.